Are there marketing tasks that need to be done for your company, but you just don't have the time or enough people to help? Do you hate managing social media? Are you curious about starting a podcast? This episode is hosted by the founder of GetLeverage.com, Nick Sonnenberg. Leverage is a premier marketing platform that pairs you with a team of experts for any big or small project that you want to outsource. In this episode of the Leverage Podcast, Nick talks with Susan Drumm, leadership development consultant who specializes on the Enneagram Type Indicator to help entrepreneurs grow and develop in their leadership style. Listen in as Susan interprets Nick's Enneagram results and how you can interpret your own results, those on your team and in your family.
Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. I'm Nick Sonnenberg, and today we have a very special guest, my friend Susan Drumm. Susan is a leadership and CEO training coach. We met at a meditation retreat in Arizona in June called Mela. She's an expert at this really awesome tool that we're going to be covering today called the Enneagram. She's involved with YPO, many high-end entrepreneurial organizations, and just an awesome human being. So thank you very much for joining me today, Susan.
Thank you. And kudos for you for putting yourself out there to debrief your own report in public. That shows a lot of confidence, which relates very well to your Enneagram type, which we'll be talking about.
So for all of you listening, we're literally just on the phone going over this personality test. It's a really descriptive, intensive test. It took way longer than DISC or some of these others that I've taken. And we were debriefing, and about 1 minute in, I was like, hey, hold on, this is gonna be a good podcast. So we literally just hung up the phone to record this.
Yeah, so on the fly. So the Enneagram is, the way I use it, obviously I do leadership development, and I use it to help people understand that there are 9 different types of leadership. And then there's some subtypes within that, which we'll go into. But each type has its own gifts and strengths and has its own blind spots and, let's say, challenge areas. And you never change your type throughout your lifetime, but you grow within your type. So you become what we talk about more integrated or more highly integrated. And what I love about it is it goes to a deeper level than, let's say, some other types of tests that are similar to this, like DISC or Myers-Briggs, where they just look at outward behavior and describe behavior and say, okay, this is what you are, like, so what? Whereas the Enneagram goes to a much deeper level. It looks at motivation, what drives you. And that is a little bit more difficult. There's more difficulty in testing for that and really honing in on it. So what we're going to be talking about today is making sure that the report or the assessment tool that you took was accurate and the accurate typing. So I'll have questions for you on that. But also what I like about it is it points to the direction of growth. So yeah, this is your type, but what do you do about it? Right? Well, where do you go with that? And why I like it, if I'm in the business of leadership and development, then I want to know, how can this person grow based on who they are? And that's exactly what the Enneagram shows us, which I will describe.
I mean, I read, you get, just so that you know, for those listening, when you do this, you get like a 45-page report. It's really, really comprehensive. I'll be honest, I didn't read the whole thing. I got to page 19 this morning. But so far what I read, it really did seem to describe me pretty well.
Yes, great. So that's usually where I start, is I say, now that you saw the overall type. So the type that Nick typed out as is called the active controller, which is also the name I like to use better than that. The report calls it that, but is protector. And the reason it's called protector is because usually these types are very confident, direct, comfortable in saying what you need to say, very decisive, trust their gut, goes with it, independent. And really anytime there's a leadership void, they will step in to fill it. And it almost can't, like, if no one's going to lead, it's the motto is lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? So but it also has this protective side, which is very loyal, very big-hearted, and interested in protecting those, particularly socially, that might be persecuted. But it could go into various forms, but wants to right the wrong, the social injustice, and has the strength, I would say, to do so. So overall, Nick, what was your thought, now that I described the type, when you read, I think particularly the first couple of pages? I usually ask, like, what was your overall impression of the typing? So
I thought that it really described me well. You know, I mean, even in my own company, if you look at this last year, I had a business partner that left very quickly, and I inherited a lot of problems with the company, and it was literally on the verge kind of bankruptcy towards the end of last year. And you know, one of the things I'm most proud of is turning around the company, and you know, it was a very narrow path to fixing it, and it took a lot of pain and suffering, and took like everything out of me. But I do think that the qualities you just described are what allowed, you know, me to kind of step up and not let the company fail.
yes, you know, type 8 will rise to any challenge. When there's a challenge, it's like you can, to some degree, you don't want to go against it for that reason, can be a formidable opponent. But given a challenge, and relishes a challenge, usually, because you have that confidence to see it through. So if you turn on page 8 is where it first describes strengths, and they're listed almost newspaper headline style. I'd like you to just take a look at that and maybe pick out 2 or 3 of these that you think best represent who you are. So let's first start with what resonates, and then I'll check to see if anything doesn't resonate.
Okay, so shall I read these out loud so people can listen? So
yeah, I would just pick, you don't have to read all of them because I think it'll end up taking too long. Maybe just pick the 2 or 3 that jump out at you, that describe you well.
All right, so definitely the first one. I have no problem with power, and naturally will gravitate towards positions of leadership and authority. You know, that's been something consistent throughout my whole life. Respond to strength. And probably the third one there. You respond to strength and independence in others. In your relationships, the strength of character will allow you to give your support and protection to others. You stand up to defend your team as long as they're coming to the party and showing their strength of character. You know, I think in general, I do also the next one, coming off with confidence. Willing to be forceful in service of others and your ideal of goals. I know what I stand for and will generally project a huge amount of certainty. Yeah, I feel that I resonate with that. I mean, kind of like all of them, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So far, it's a more accurate typing then, in terms of the strengths.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't like unsentimental decisions. Like, I do kind of disassociate and try to just make the best decision without being too emotional about it. When you apply your focus and intent to a problem, you will work through, and yeah, the last one especially, I think that one of my unique abilities is a high pain tolerance. And like I've said before, that even though I'm good at math and all these other things, I think that what makes me a good CEO is my high pain tolerance and being able to get through tough times.
Yes, you'll fight the battle. Yeah. And stay the course and have the energy. We often call type 8s have big energy to withstand, sometimes to the point where they don't realize that they need to take care of themselves a bit more, which we'll now get into some of the challenges of your type.
It's another certainly issue that I've been realizing is that I've, you know, spent less time on myself lately because I'm so, you know, consumed by a lot of these things.
Yes. Well, it's a good lead in now. If the way we think about it in Enneagram is if your focus of attention is on one thing, one area, it means that there's another perspective that you're not as focused on. And that's usually where the challenges come to play. So on the next page, these are typical challenges that type 8 will face. So similarly, if you could take a look at this, and let's first pick out the challenges that you can see in yourself, and then we'll look at if there's any that don't resonate with you. So first, what does resonate?
So the first one, I definitely, I'll just speak my mind. I don't like to sugarcoat. So some people might feel bullied or humiliated or feel like it's tough to talk to me because I'll push back. If you say something I don't agree with or I have an opinion on, I'll just bluntly say what's on my mind. Let's see, your tendency to act on your own interests can seem selfish. Not so much. You don't like it when people encroach on your freedom and personal choice. I resonate with that one. I'm not obedient. Like if someone tells me to do something and I don't agree with it, I'll have a tough time. So that's why being like a CEO is a good fit for me, because I wouldn't ever do well, in a job, especially like if I didn't agree with how like some of the tasks my boss wanted me to do. I wouldn't do well with that. My certainty can push others away. Yeah, I think people can find it hard sometimes to talk to me because I might just be not willing to budge and compromise with them. You want things to be done in your way. I mean, I'm open. I want things to be done in the right way. So if someone can disprove me, I'm totally fine and happy, and I don't feel like an ego hit if someone else comes up with a better idea to do something. That would excite me. But I don't know. There's a lot of times where I feel like what I said was the best idea.
Yes. What can happen is a type 8 gets a little attached to their idea. So, and with the first part that you talked about, where people can feel a bit more, see you as intimidating. Often type 8s, I don't know if you've ever, has anyone ever said that they find you intimidating? That can be frequent for type 8.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things. I've heard intimidating, asshole, dead on the inside.
Yeah.
No feelings. I've heard it all. I think also, in my past job, I was a high frequency trader where I was dealing with billions of dollars of the bank's money. And in that job, you have to be able to back up your decisions very logically. Like things wouldn't fly. Like if there was a mess up and you couldn't fully explain it, you would just be fired, right? When you are dealing at that level. So, I think some of this is just, I think that my personality led me to that type of job, but then even more so while in that job, I even kind of got more so to be like how I am, where I kind of now expect people to be able to back up their decisions with logic and reasoning. And I think that people just aren't used to being held accountable to the way or answer questions like how I ask them questions, because I think it's something that most CEOs or most people, might not be asking all the questions that I ask. And I'm doing it from this previous experience of having to be highly accountable.
With it, yeah. Well, usually type 8s have a very strong presence. I always say you can feel it when an 8 is in the room, even if they're not talking, just by your very nature. We also call these the body. There's 3 body types, and type 8 is one of the body types. It's a strong presence that some can feel more intimidated by, and therefore what happens is when you're doing that and being so direct as you are with your questioning, people can, feel nervous, or as you said here, bullied, or, not meet that energy where you are with that. And often types 8 don't realize that they do have this big energy. And perhaps when we talk about the growth area, infusing a little warmth with it will help temper that. Even in the way you ask questions.
Totally. I mean, a lot of people have said that there is a lack of warmth when I'm analyzing and thinking deeply. So if someone's talking to me, a lot of the times, if I'm thinking heavily, like I'll just be staring, because I'm thinking deeply. So I'm not like smiling and nodding. So some people have said that it's intimidating, kind of having like me just be staring so intensely at them while I'm thinking.
Yes, because they're making up all sorts of things about that, right? I would say in the absence of communication, people make it up. So they are making that up, and you couple that with your presence and the directness. That's often what could happen.
Mm-hmm.
How about in some of the pieces where, as I mentioned before, you can overextend yourself and not, with all that energy and fighting the fight, sort of forget to take care of yourself and what you need. It's almost this ability, like a belief that you're invincible. I'm not saying that, maybe not that strongly, but there's like, I don't need that, I'll be fine, kind of thing.
No, definitely. It's like, what's that saying? Like the CEO eats last, or I forget what that phrase is, but
yes.
I get super highly focused, especially, when I was fixing all the broken stuff with my company, and it's very easy for me to prioritize that over even my own self, and work out less or not. I like playing chess, so that I haven't played as much chess as I used to because I'm just so busy with work. So making time for myself definitely is a struggle for me when I'm super busy and wrapped up with work.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen a lot of times type 8 is, not taking care of themselves in the pursuit of what needs to happen with the business or whatever project. And the reason it's called active controller, because there's a little bit like, if you're not holding the reins, this thing could go anywhere. So there's an attachment to that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be hard to let go of that attachment, like without your presence, because you have such a strong leadership presence, what will happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
And kind of back to the other point, like since I'm, my background's in math and I'm very data oriented, I think a lot of people find it tough sometimes to talk with me, because if I back up what I'm saying with data, it's very hard to counter that, which is
yes.
a natural way of speaking, right? So,
and maybe people won't be as good in a direct way in doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a little bit. Is there anything here that doesn't resonate with you? Because I might be able to explain it with regard to your subtype, which we're just about to get into.
No, it resonated pretty well, I think.
Okay, great. So the subtype is on the next page, and this gives a little bit of variation. So if you can imagine that there are 9 different flavors of ice cream, right? Those are the 9 primary styles, leadership styles. There are also 3 different sauces you can put on that ice cream, and those are the subtypes. The 3 subtypes are self-preservation, which is about the primal instinct of survival, physical safety, material security, well-being, comfort. There's the one-to-one, and that primary concern is about the intensity of experience and focusing attention on the quality and status of relationships with specific people. So the one-to-one exchange. And then there's the social, which is primary concern is about belonging and recognition in the group, in social groups. So it's looking at how my orientation is very group focused and what's happening with the group.
Yeah,
so,
this was very accurate too. I've called myself a survivor many times.
Yeah. So you typed out as self-preservation, just of those 3. Yeah. So say more. You were saying that.
I was saying like back to kind of inheriting this broken business when my ex-partner left. I knew I would be able to turn around because I'm a survivor and I wouldn't let it die.
Yeah. And because of that, there's a little bit more of an independent flair to this type 8. So it flavors it in a way that this ability and extreme confidence in surviving the most challenging situations. Very hardworking, natural flair for business. And if you notice, trading and negotiating, right? It's like it makes everything that you did in your prior life as a trader make total sense. Yeah. Because this type is usually really good at sussing out, getting the upper hand and clinching deals in your favor, and has an instinct for that as a result.
So far, I'm liking the test.
So there's this sort of straightforwardness, and there's an ability that you could feel so secure that you'll go against any opposition of any kind. Yep. You know, and almost like make your own rules to achieve what you want.
I've had team calls where it's like 10 people are against me on a decision, and I'll still go with it because I just believe so deeply that it's the right move.
Yes. Yeah. And so therefore, your need to be strong could make you overlook feelings sometimes, both your own and kind of the emotional side and those of others. And you may not be aware of the adverse effect it has on others as a result. Each of the types has a vice and a virtue. The vice for type 8 is passion. So the self-preservation goes for what's needed in order to survive in a direct, powerful, and passionate way. And there's a code word for it that's actually called satisfaction, which is a strong need to get what's yours and obtain what you need for survival as a result of that. Yes. So with all of that, we'll look at the growth areas, just being conscious of, you know, our time and making sure we get to the growth piece. But anything else you want to say about the subtype so you understand that particular flavor for you?
No, I think it makes sense.
Okay. In general, for the subtype, it's what you want to move towards is the ability to express a wider range of feelings, especially vulnerable feelings. So because type 8s tend to be so strong, they like showing any vulnerability can be like, well, why would you ever want to do that? I mean, I don't want to show vulnerability. But it's actually a way of bringing people closer to you and a way people connect with you with all the big energy can push away. And so usually type 8s have the hardest with working on that, but that is their growth path, is that ability to show vulnerability and expressing more thoughts and emotions, especially in relationships. Mm-hmm. How are you with vulnerability?
I don't think I'm that bad at vulnerability. I think that if I find myself to be wrong, I don't have a hard time admitting it in general. Mm-hmm. But I will make you, I won't just jump to saying I'm wrong. Just as I would come up with the facts to prove that I'm right, I would expect the other person to come up with the same depth of facts to prove me wrong. But if I'm proved wrong, then I don't have that much of a problem, being wrong.
Right. So it may be that's related to facts. It may be vulnerability around your fears, your concerns. Mm-hmm. Any place that you could potentially feel uncomfortable, where even if a type 8 senses that, they quickly push it away as almost invalid.
Yes, since I'm, as you said, my secondary is to be a survivor, I think mm-hmm. that I'm constantly trying to mitigate risk and reduce vulnerabilities as part of that trait.
Yes. And so there's, because of that, because it's more of a blanket statement around vulnerability, type 8s often don't see that there's a gift in vulnerability. And that's what I'm talking about, allowing people to connect with you when you're more open with fears, concerns, the more vulnerable parts of yourself. And only you know where that is and where that touches. But it's again, we're going to talk now about wing styles and arrow lines, but it's a place to look. So one growth area with 8s is around vulnerability. The second theme to look at are what we call the wing styles. Now in the report, this is on page 15, but I also sent you in the email, so you might want to just pull that up. The email I sent you has these are the directions of growth. Wing style just means it's the type on either side of you. So the Enneagram is a circle, and the types that are on either side of type 8 are type 7 and type 9, right? Mm-hmm. And so the report describes, if you imagine you have sort of two consultants in your life. One you have on speed dial and you use all the time, and the other you probably forgot their number, and you can use these consultants for good and for bad. So the report describes, if you use your consultant of the type 7, which is called the enthusiastic visionary, this is how you use it for good, and the low side would be how you use it for bad. And similarly for type 9, which is the adaptive peacemaker or the mediator. But in the email, I think I cut right to the chase that I sent you. The way I look at it is, what can you learn from type 7 and what can you learn from type 9? So type 7, being the enthusiastic visionary, their primary motivator is fun. It's about fun, it's about options, and it's about experiencing all that life has to offer. And so what a type 8 can usually learn from a type 7 is this ability to lighten up. Because 8s approach their work with great intensity, the growth is to balance this tendency with the lightheartedness of a 7, pausing to find what's funny, what's positive in this current situation. And so a phrase you might ask yourself is, what do I notice that's interesting or amusing in what's happening? And sort of approach it from a little bit more lighthearted stance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you see in that for you?
I think that I'm definitely an 8, not a 7, what we were talking about earlier. But yeah, I do think that would be good for me, is to kind of take a step back sometimes, focus on myself, and also, lighten up and think about, the joy in what we're doing, rather than just trying to execute all the time.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's one growth area. The other growth area is 9. And type 9 is, as I mentioned, the peacemaker or the mediator. They're really good team players, really want to hear everybody's viewpoint, make sure that no voice is left unheard, right? And so their gift is this ability to be receptive, and that's what a type 8 can adapt more of, because 8s make instantaneous assessments and usually respond immediately. There's usually quite a driver of impatience with the type 8. So to be more receptive, it requires you examining your own reactions and really keep digging in to say, is there something more I need to learn? What other questions can I ask to discover before making the conclusion? And take on more of that 9 energy. So what do you see in that for you?
Yeah, I guess
receptivity.
Yeah, I think that's accurate as well, that I need to be more open-minded and receptive to other people's opinions.
The way it would show up, it would be more, rather than going with that gut instantaneous reaction, pausing and asking 1 or 2 more questions to dig in.
Right.
That would be the growth area.
Okay.
Okay. So those are the wing styles. There's a lot more, but just given our timing, I'm not going to go too much in the wing styles. I just want to touch on the arrow lines, because the arrow lines in the diagram, the diagram of the Enneagram has different arrow lines that point to different types. And these are also areas of development. It points to what you can learn most from. So your arrow lines is type 8 point to type 5, which is called the quiet observer or the sage.
Which
and usually with type what you can learn from that style is that they have a great ability to take time to conserve their resources and recharge. So for a type 8 is like, take 2 to 3 hours for yourself without fail once a week. Doing something that you truly enjoy that's relaxing to you. And the reason this is important is because your tendency can be to go into overdrive and have others experience you as overly intense. So once you've mastered that ability, looking at short bursts of recharging time and how to take care of yourself. So we've already kind of touched on this a little bit when you talked about kind of forgetting yourself in the process.
Which page are you on right now?
I'm actually on the email I sent you. It's at the bottom of the email, because this is what.
Okay, gotcha.
It's kind of out of the report because I'm cutting to the chase on it because the report goes into much more detail.
Okay.
So that's airline 5, and then I'll give you airline 2. The other style that you can learn from is the Considerate Helper. So the Considerate Helper is extremely empathetic, almost feels others' emotions as though it were their own, can always sense the emotional state of what's going on in the room, and have this great ability to acknowledge the best in others. So always looking to sing the praises of others and what have they contributed. And so sometimes types 8 in the ability to tackle the challenge forgets to take time to sing the praises of others. Or the other thing that can happen is a type 8 can, almost I say, be very polarity. It would step into polarity, and either somebody is a demon or an angel in a way. Either you love them or you hate them in a way. And so for those that are sort of in the doghouse, I usually work with CEOs to force themselves to think of 3 positive qualities about that person, and that it's not so black and white between the best and the worst, and trying to see more of the shades of gray and the in-between, and what the gifts are of the person that they've determined is sort of in the doghouse. So those 2, line 5 and line 2, would be other areas of growth for you. Do you see any opportunities in there for you?
Yeah, definitely. Like the black and white thing is something that I relate to, and I have been trying, but I need to do more of this, which is, thinking positive and identifying a few good traits on someone. Or one thing that I got from my friend Lee Brower is to, before meetings, think about how I want people to feel after the meeting as an outcome. So kind of doing some more thought around that versus just trying to get to a solution or a fact is something that I've been trying to work on too.
Yeah, great. Mm-hmm. So normally what I do at this point is I'll say, okay, of these 4 things we just talked about, what do you want to work on, right? And if we were like in a coaching situation, we'd make some development goals around what will be different, and then what actions you want to take to bring that to life, which we're not going to, obviously we don't have time to go into now, but you can see how this is such a powerful tool to help people grow and develop in their leadership style, to be able to be more highly integrated. And that's why we say integration, because what you're looking to do is integrate the 7, the 9, the 5, and the 2, and be less rooted and steeped in personality.
Okay.
So overall, what are your thoughts? What are your impressions?
I thought it was pretty darn accurate. I mean, of these 9 different traits, is 8 like the one where it's most kind of I don't want to say overworked, but the person that kind of can get deeply ingrained in their work and, get so wrapped up in it that they'll achieve a lot of things, but at the expense of other things?
No, it's not the only type. There's another type. A lot of the types they just do it under a different motivating desire. So competitive achiever can very much, again, you look at external behavior getting wrapped up in your work, but what's the motivator behind it is what we're looking at. So there's type 3 competitive achiever is doing it basically to look good for a polished persona or image. Whereas type 8 is doing it for a different reason. And type 7 will do it for a different reason.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And part of my reason is this survival instinct that we talked about.
Right, exactly. That if you don't step up, that you might eventually be controlled yourself. So rather than be controlled, you'll be the controller.
And
it's a streak of independence. It's like claiming your independence with it.
And is that because it's driven by a fear of being controlled or a desire to control?
They're sort of two sides of the same coin. So yes, at the core, below motivation is fear. That's at the root of it, and what fears or activities are driving you.
Yeah.
But it's the instinctual drive.
Yeah, because that's something I've been thinking a lot about actually before this test is like, what drives me? Is it that I'm, on the surface, you might think I'm super goal oriented with some of the things I've achieved, but am I getting to kind of the same place, but driven by different motivations? Like, is it a fear of loss? Why do I sometimes set these huge benchmarks in my head and I then go out and achieve them, because if I don't, I'll feel really down on myself and I have this fear of loss, versus getting to the end and feeling like I really achieved something. So it's kind of subtle, but different factors that is similar to what you're talking about here.
Yeah. Well, I encourage you to read the rest of the report. There's some really good stuff in there about communication, how to give feedback, and then some like looking at stress levels, and happy to chat with you more about it as you get a chance to delve a little bit more into it.
This is super interesting. So when you work with so can you explain a bit like how consulting with you works, and when you go into a company or a team, do you make everyone take this exam or just CEO?
Well, it depends. So there's a couple different assessment tools I use. There's 360 assessment, which is getting feedback and looking at your stage of growth within your own adult stage development. This is one I use as well. This is more of a self-assessment. I use it a lot with teams, because if you can understand how what drives other people, motivates them, and how they think and view the world, you can speak to them in a language they can hear versus getting caught up in what can feel like perplexing behavior. So that sometimes with the C-suite team, I'll have all of the members of the team take it. They'll debrief, get their own debrief, and then we'll bring them all together to talk about the different types. You'll get a chance to learn about the different types, and then talk about as a team, how do we make sure that we're interacting in a way that supports. And a lot of times people are like, oh, that's why you do what you do. It's like this big revelation. And there's a lot of bonding. Like example, the loyal skeptic, which is often type 6, it's called the troubleshooter. They're really good at scanning the horizon to see what could go wrong. And there was one type 6 in a team, and the others would get kind of like, oh, there's Debbie Downer again, but she played an important role, and one that should be valued in the group, because no one else comes with that perspective. So it really gave her a voice in the leadership team now to respect and understand where it's coming from. It's of a desire not to step in the pothole. And so the team got along a lot better after really understanding the different styles. So that's how I use it.
I know some people that I think is it DISC, where there's like the 4 numbers, like quick start, and is that DISC?
It's DISC stands for the DISC.
Maybe it's Colby. I know some people where they literally will rearrange where people sit based on their Colby scores, and like stick on the back of their chair what the score is, so people know what they're getting into when they talk to that person.
Oh yeah. That's why I always require first a separate debrief. You don't do this without having just what we did, which is the one-on-one exchange first to make sure it's an accurate typing. Second, to really hone in on what your areas of growth were, so you can come to these types of sessions with a little bit more humility and not be like, oh, you're this type, that doesn't work.
No, totally. So I want to be respectful of your time. Where can people find out more information about you if they want to learn more about the coaching or taking this type of test?
Yeah, so, well, you can find more about Meritage Leadership is the name of my company. And if you just go to meritageleadership.com, it's MERITAGE leadership. And you'll see we have some descriptions about how we work with senior teams and how we work with, we also do leadership development programs using some of the other assessment tools I mentioned, like the 360. And we also have a Rising Stars program, which is more for high potential managers and doing some of the development through webinar-based tool. So that's where you can find me. I'm also on Twitter at Drumm Leadership. You can connect with me on LinkedIn as well at Susan Drumm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining on this impromptu podcast. This was really great.
Yes, thanks for having me, and thanks for being so, you did display like that does take some guts and vulnerability. So, so good for you. I'm working on that. That's great.
That I solidified the type 8.
In the world.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Leverage Podcast. Leverage is an on-demand outsourcing platform that helps small business owners and entrepreneurs scale their business. We have a team of experts that can help set up marketing and sales funnels, email marketing, podcasts, social media, paid media, and much more. Grow your business overnight with a team of experts you can trust to deliver. Accomplish more. Visit getleverage.com.